morning, I suddenly realized
Dental, yeah, it's the same group.
where is this?
Evening event. We would also like to thank NDTV Prime for coming on board with us as our TV partner for this event. Over the last 3 years, we have conducted 12 roundtables on the theme, The Art and Science of Developing Leaders, with different sub-themes across various metros in India, and received tremendous response from the HR fraternity in all the places. While last year's deliberations have been compiled and placed on your tables for your ready reference, this year we are back again in collaboration with our partners and panelists with another series of discussions on a new theme, this being the second in this year's series. We bring to you this series on the theme Engaging the 21st Century Workforce, where we aim to share research from Deloitte and insights from our experienced panelists. The world's top-performing organizations understand that employee engagement is a force that drives business outcomes. Research shows that engaged employees are more productive, profitable, customer-focused, and more likely to withstand temptations to leave the organization. Employee engagement has become a strategic approach supported by tactics for driving improvement and organizational change. I would now like to invite Dr. H. Chaturvedi, Director, Birla Institute of Management Technology, to deliver the welcome address. With a master's degree in commerce and doctorate in business management from Agra University, Dr. H. Chaturvedi has more than 36 years of experience in teaching, research, and administration. As a former director with the AICTE, New Delhi, he has been associated with the formulation of policies, planning, regulation, and control of management education, as well as other disciplines under technical education. Dr. Chaturvedi is a founder member and the alternate president of Education Promotion Society for India, a national platform for eminent educationists, education service providers, and edu entrepreneurs. He is also the president of the Alumni Association of Agra University and the Ranganathan Society for Social Welfare and Library Development. Over to you, sir.
And gentlemen, it is a matter of great pleasure that in this HR Roundtable, presented by BIMTech in partnership with the National HRD Network, a premier body of HR professionals in India, Deloitte, and NDTV Prime, we have amidst us some of the leading thought leaders from the Indian business and academia who have been actively involved in nurturing and engaging talent. Their views and experiences in today's HR Roundtable will be extremely relevant since they represent a wide spectrum of leadership in diverse areas. On behalf of BIMTech and our partners, NHRDN, Deloitte, and NDTV Prime, I have great pleasure in welcoming the distinguished panelists in the HR Roundtable and all those stalwarts of the industry who are part of today's deliberations. Our eminent speakers for the day, in alphabetical order, include Mr. P. Thiruvengadam, Senior Director, Deloitte; Mr. Rajesh Sahai, Global Head, HR, Wipro Consumer Care; Mr. Prince Augustine, Executive Vice President, Group HR, Mahindra Group; Mr. Sudeep Banerjee, Executive CEO, L&T Infotech; Mr. Suraj Chhatri, Head HR, Airbus and Airbus Group in India; and Dr. Vasanthi Srinivasan, Associate Professor, OB and HRM, IIM Bangalore. Friends, they are known in the industry for their dedicated practice and researches. Welcome them all as distinguished speakers in the round table and request you to welcome them with a big applause. The current and future talent pool is changing, as is today's business environment. And so the business imperative for adapting and developing the workplace has never been greater. What are the key features of the 21st century workforce? Its challenges and opportunities. What should business do to remain highly productive and competitive amidst tough trading conditions and a rapidly changing marketplace? In today's HR Roundtable, we are going to discuss the challenges of talent acquisition and access in the 21st century, what the millennials look for in a job, how to attract them and ensure that they perform to the best of their abilities. The topic is relevant for all stakeholders of business. What is so peculiar about the millennial generation that has joined the workforce in the 21st century? Research findings from Bentley University's study in 2012 suggest that millennials are interested in business careers that match their values and passions. They seek employers that can offer social responsibility and green conscious innovation to match their generation's unique entrepreneurial spirit. They are result-oriented professionals with a different abstract set of creative communication skills. Instead of focusing on repetitive, process-driven tasks that are often associated with the traditional business territory, millennials can be game changers. They are not averse to providing feedback to help improve processes. According to the same study, 63% of business decision makers and 68% of corporate recruiters say that it is difficult to manage millennials. Today, business leaders understand the strategic significance of talent acquisition. They are carefully looking at how they are going to fill the gap in skills and company knowledge left by retired persons. They are applying new use of technology for virtual workplace options that can make them more flexible to employees, more attractive to candidates, and open to talent from around the world. They are adopting advanced strategies and tactics to evolve their talent acquisition operations, and they are embracing a range of emerging best practices from workforce planning to employer branding. Recent business factors such as increasing competition and the shortage of talented workforce have encouraged organizations to focus not only on talent acquisition but also to support retention and employees' development. In today's knowledge economy, talent is not only critical, it is also scarce. Management should consider that an effective way to attract and retain talent is to create an environment where talented people can develop. Talented people seek out opportunities to grow, and they will flock to organizations that provide ample opportunities to do so. Retention no longer remains a issue. If people are developing more rapidly than they could anywhere else, why should they leave? If companies are truly serious about attracting, retaining, and developing high quality talent, they need to view themselves as growth platforms for talent where people can develop themselves faster than they could elsewhere. This in turn can create a self-reinforcing cycle as talent creates more opportunities for growth. Given the current economic challenges, employers are likely to put a premium on having fully engaged employees. A majority of employees want work that is challenging, satisfying, and where there are opportunities for learning and development. While factors such as competitive pay might affect the decisions that employees make about working for a particular company, factors such as opportunities for learning and development are related to employees expressing a willingness to go the extra mile at work. Other factors leading to better employees' engagement are number of work hours, satisfaction with opportunities for training and development, the culture of flexibility, supervisors' support, perceptions of inclusion, and perceptions of job security. Most talented people prefer an organization whose work engages their interest and deserves their passion. Their levels of engagement and motivation are subject to constant fluctuation in response to micro-signals, small indications of whether the company is committed to their growth, whether it really believes in serving a higher purpose, what kinds of behaviors are rewarded, how much can be learned from working there, and more. The need for self-improvement is deeply satisfying to people of many skill levels and positions, and becoming a platform for talent can help an organization in terms of attracting and retaining highly skilled people. Leaders who understand the importance of creating systems where employees at many levels have opportunities for growth may find that they have tapped into the fundamental human motivation for progress, and they may see significant progress in innovation, productivity, and efficiency. We look forward to knowing the views of our distinguished panelists assembled here. Thank you once again to all of our guests.
Sir, for the keynote session.
Every year, we call this as Global Human Capital Trends, and 2014 report, I'll summarize it briefly for you. I would be using a PowerPoint presentation. It has a lot of details that probably you may not be able to read. I don't think it was intended for you to read also. I'll summarize it. I could speak about this report having been involved quite significantly offhand, but you can't separate a consultant from a PowerPoint. All these years of living with PowerPoint, it's a little difficult. I'll have withdrawal symptoms, and so I would like to avoid that. This report we bring out every year after we do an extensive survey. This year's survey covered about 2,594 professionals all over the world. It's a global report, and it covers many cuts and dimensions of professionals as we see them. But a large number, the largest segment of those were covered are CHROs and also the CEOs of companies. So as a group, CXOs, but primarily CHROs. So we have one cut, which I'll explain to you later, in terms of how it is, the responses are divided from the top management and also from the HR professionals. The discussion, the points that I'm going to present, this is not a keynote session, this is just a presenting of a survey. That key findings are there, and I'm then going to talk about 12 trends very quickly, and then I'll talk about the urgency of those trends and the readiness of the community to address those trends. Finally, I'll talk about the report card, which again the survey reveals from the point of view what kind of investments are to be made, both qualitative and quantitative investments, and how far the investments are being made, and to what extent the people see in their own perception as to what the investments are going to be. So these are the 4 broad things, roughly 12 to 15 minutes, and then we have the most important part of the evening, which is the panel discussion. The key findings I'll take you through first. This is really the survey. We've had this point coming up in the previous surveys, but this time it's very clear. Leadership is a big engagement issue across the world, and this has come across continents, across countries. Incidentally, India is one of the larger contributors of 150 responses in India from leaders in India, one of the significant countries which have contributed to this survey as a whole. The second point, which is just mentioned, which is the theme of these roundtables, which is engaging the 21st century workforce. I think enough has been said about it, but what really interesting is this survey brings out what kind of dimensions we are talking about when we talk about engaging the 21st century workforce. What's retention, what's engagement from that point of view. The third important dimension is HR as a function, as a business proposition, is probably falling, is failing to keep up with what is required. I don't think that's a surprise to all of you here, but the way in which it has probably not met what is required is what is interesting. And the technology and analytics, which has really contributed to what we call as an overwhelmed employee. This is probably first time finding in this survey that the employees do seem to feel overexposed, overindulged, overwhelmed in many ways, and this is going to be a focus area for HR. Please do take note of this and see what this means in respective organizations. Finally, the skill gaps. The skill gaps is a very interesting dimension. I'll just relate it to the India report at the end, but skill gaps from an Indian perspective is acute, and it's coming out very clearly from the respondents that we've had. Let's quickly look at the reports, the trends. The trends are 12 in a survey of this nature, which has got a questionnaire which probably takes about 45 minutes to fill for a senior professional in an organization, and which we find is about the right time before the attention span sort of wavers. So it's a fairly important level of concentration that people have endowed this survey with. We have to cull the data out into something which makes sense, and it has to be self-sustaining and not contradictory. So these 12 trends that we have really pulled out from the entire results, a lot of it is numbers, but some of it is very, very clear and qualitative findings also. So we've classified them into 3 dimensions, 3 groups, 3 clusters, if you would like to call them. One is lead and develop, that's about the leadership development side. Attract and engage from the people side, and transform and reinvent from the profession side, which probably is of greater relevance to the audience here. So all the 3, each of them has got 4, it's not so much for the uniformity and consistency's sake that we have made it into 12 broad findings, broad trends divided into 3 clusters, but it's also a fact that these have emerged pretty well in the course of the analysis that we did. So we have lead and develop, which is something which I would say has 4 broad dimensions. They're there. Developing leaders at all levels, the learning that goes into making these leaders happen, the fact that the performance management as a methodology, as a dimension, as something which contributes to developing leaders over a period of time, including succession, that's been something which is, and also in terms of building up the capability. So leading and developing as an issue, which is what we had to combine. Obviously, this could lead to very, very different dimensions of discussions, but we tried to combine because we found that there were things which are coming out as common themes in terms of how leadership and development go together in many, many organizations. So this is one major area and something which has been repeatedly mentioned. Just to share with this group, leadership is the #1 trend among all. The issue that has been focused and said practically by every one of the respondents as something which they would like to mention as an issue that they need to be looking at. So leadership is probably the topmost one. The second top, as far as attract and engage, which is the next cluster, in this, the talent acquisition is one side. The retention and engagement is the one which is coming out as a second important trend. So leadership, then retention and engagement, which is the second important trend. This has again got talent acquisition, what one looks for in terms of retention, and interestingly, inclusion is making an appearance first time in this. Diversity was an issue, but now it's morphing into inclusion. And the overwhelmed employee. The point that overwhelmed employee is coming here is because the level of engagement seems to have a very clear relationship to the extent of involvement of an employee in what we call as the organization. So the organization time, the organization impact, the organization effort seems to be leaving an employee somewhat disengaged at a certain level. So the survey, people have repeatedly mentioned this in significant numbers, but not a top trend, but it is a trend in the top 12. Finally, transform and invent primarily from the point of view of HR skilling. HR, when I say the function itself, the talent function, in terms of transforming these professionals into, this has been talked about, all of you are aware of this, the business, not just the partner, but a leader. Has been successful experiments have been there in terms of moving the business people into HR and HR into, we had some interesting discussions. The panel met just before this event, and this was a point which is coming up. But to what extent this has really helped in transforming the HR function is something which we need to be seeing. How much strategic, again, talked about in all four, but the strategic nature of HR and strategic nature of its contribution to business is something which is yet to be exploited to the degree that one would like to believe. As consultants, we do see a lot of work. It's interesting, cutting edge, but the stickiness of those leaves, you go back after a year, 18 months, you do find that there are gaps of what has been created, what has been probably well drafted and well conceptualized. The level with a very large multinational, recently we've had very interesting experience in this entire movement towards this, but this, obviously there are clear failings. So the level of push that is needed, and in terms of analytics, this is something which has been discussed, I think, in all four, and there's so much of effort that goes into analytics, interpretation of analytics. On an average day, every media person is interested in finding out what really analytics is doing. Is it shaping the future of how the HR function is going to look at itself, how the business leaders are looking at it? Is analytics going to play a role? Much has been said, but it has come to stay. The trend, analytics is catching up. It's catching up as well as probably CRM in its own way, but the impact of that in terms of significantly altering what we are doing effectively is something which we'll have to wait and see, but the trend is there, it's come to stay. The other dimension is the usage and development of technology, which is the third sub-trend within transform and reinvent. Technology, the interesting part that's coming out is a question that we addressed our audience, the survey respondents, is how much is really technology consuming your time, how effective it is. People are still struggling with the finer aspects of technology. The implementation of software, ERP, purely from a people perspective has been done. Many organizations, a very large number of organizations have embarked upon that. The journey is on, it's moving, but it's not really delivering what's required at the end of it. You take, we always do this comparison, you take financial results, you take inventory results from a technology perspective as used in a business, and you take people results, there's a still gap. You might say there is an aging, there is a certain firstborn and so on, but the advantages are still not completely clear in terms of how well you're using. Finally, in terms of today, it's really global. In global, this is going to be, if you're going to talk about global talent pool, you've got to talk about global skilling and global kind of people who are going to be managing. So that's something which is probably one would have to look at. So these are the 12 trends. Summary for you to say, and you would get it's on our website. The entire report is available. You're welcome to look at it, Deloitte Resources. Next, I'd like to talk about the broad demographics. That's not important. Perceived urgency of 12 global trends. This is how the urgency is defined. What is important? What is urgent? So if you look at the urgent and important, which is on the right side of this, nothing less than 60-70%. It's going right up to 80 plus. So that shows that every one of the respondents, large number of them, you would see the numbers. Readiness. Fine, you're saying it's urgent, so how ready are you? If you look at that, again, the readiness is not in any way matching the urgency of what these trends are. So if you look at each and every one of those trends and look at the readiness in terms of what they should be, companies are generally reporting that the readiness is on the lower side. This is very, it's not insightful in that sense, probably one would assume that, but it's clear that the data says so, and the respondents have confirmed that while the urgency of certain trends is very clear, it's not as if organizations are ready to tackle it in any significant way. The third is the way in which we are looking at the trends of urgency and readiness. We have summarized both these graphs into a single diagram. So you find everything on the bottom right-hand corner. So everything is there, a whole lot of them. Very few trends are able to find its way up and to the right. So that's really what you would find, that this is clearly what we have tried to put it in a form which can be easily understood and looked at. So this is from the point of view of urgency and readiness and how it's going to impact the future of the talent function. Now let's quickly come to India. I'll not go into details about each one of these findings. I'd like to look at the India. This is really what the Indian trends are. Everything is same. Only thing that's moving up is talent acquisition and access. I mentioned this earlier. So this is for India, leadership is right on top. Immediately following that is the talent acquisition and access. What is coming out is also that instead of that, the retention and engagement has acquired also a higher degree of importance in the case of India. India, as I told you, significant leaders across the country have responded to it. And on the right side, again, the capability gap index, the size of that horizontal line represents the gap. The gap is significant from the point of view, what's capability. So you ask them, are you in a position to manage this? This is what you say as your important area to be looked at. Are you in a position to tackle it? How capable are you? The capability index indicates that the longer the line, the capability is less. So that's something which you need to be really looking at from the point of view of comparison. On top half you have India, bottom half you have global. So you'd find that there is very clearly closer correlation between the two, which if you look at our last 3-4 surveys, we've had differing experiences on this, but this survey, there is very clearly a significant correlation between what India and what a global says. So 3 parts of the survey in talking about the trends, the readiness and capability gap, and also what it means to India. Let's finally look at the investments and the report card. What the HR people are saying and what the CEOs are saying. So we have both of these in terms of what the report, what they're saying, that areas that they need to look at, what's the kind of investment that are they going to invest more than 5% or 1 to 5%? What's the kind of investment that they're going to make significantly more than what they've been doing? You find while the problems are identified, at least people don't seem to think or know what investments are to be made and where these investments are going to come from. So when we talk to people, we find that many of them talk about the investment technology, for example, is a very, very key reply that we get. Investments in learning and development, which is something which people are talking about. But very little is talked about the reskilling, the function and its positioning. In the entire survey, I came across only very few organizations which said they have the courage to go back to the management, while the CEOs perceive, a large number of CEOs have said that they need to be relooking at their function, their talent function. Interestingly, the CHROs have not said that as one of the key things that they're going to be investing in. The investments are more in the case of technology and analytics and probably cloud and so on. Cloud is a promise. Again, this is a very interesting sidelight. Cloud is a promise which has been there, and it's, but the reality is that it's not going to be, there are a number of, I'm sure many of you are aware, there are very good cloud-based solutions today available for people-related matters, very comprehensive, but these are not catching on all that well. There seems to be a slowness. This is very much applicable to developed countries as well. It's not as if the trend is for emerging economies, it's for everyone. So we would have to see what the investments are. But the key fact is that ultimately, if you look at the India report card and the global report card, it's very clearly that you need to be making those investments. And these are very, very significant investments. And these investments, as a proportion of what talent investments are in terms of effectiveness, these are going to demand huge requirements. The amounts that we are talking about, made some estimates, talked to some of our clients and so on, they're not ready to believe those kind of numbers. As a proportion of the business, it's probably still not very significant, but the increase in the budgets, the word budgets is something which I'm a little uncomfortable with, but if you have to use the word budgets, the increases and the numbers that we're talking about from the point of view of what allocations that are required, it's significant, it's quite humongous, and if people are not ready to face that, I think we're going to have some serious concerns around realization and moving away from the trends that we talked about and saying, look, these are the trends that are going to be reflected, but if these trends have to be corrected in some way or the other, wherever there is improvement that needs to be done, it's going to be a challenge. So this, in essence, is what we want to share in a session like this. I think it's appropriate to stop at this point of time. We'll take questions later along with the panel in some of these areas. You're welcome to address. But today, the session is on talent acquisition and access, which is one of the top trends. As far as India is concerned, this is the second most important trend. And that's why NHRD and BIMTech have wisely decided to keep that as a topic for discussion for the panel today, this evening in Bangalore. So look forward to the panel session, the eminent panel. Thank you so much for listening.
Shore Captive Center based at Hyderabad. Mr. Sahai started his career with NTPC and has also worked with the Arvind Mills Limited. He had an earlier stint of 7 years with Wipro Technologies, where he led the talent engagement. I take the opportunity to invite Mr. Suraj Chetri to join the panel under the Young HR Manager category. In 2013, the Asia Pacific HRM Congress conferred on him the HR Leadership Award for his contribution in the area of human resources. Welcome to the panel, sir. Last but not the least, I invite Dr. Vasanthi Srinivasan to join the panel here. Dr. Srinivasan is Associate Professor in the area of Organizational Behavior and Human Resource Management and the Chairperson, Center for Corporate Governance and Citizenship at IIM Bangalore. She holds a PG Diploma in Personnel Management and Industrial Relations from XLRI Jamshedpur and a Fellow in Management from IIM Bangalore. Earlier, she worked at Wipro Limited and the PNP Group, a Bangalore-based boutique consulting firm. She is a member of various professional bodies and also on the advisory board of the NHRD Network Bangalore chapter. She has been involved in several research, training, and consulting projects with several Indian and global companies. It's a pleasure to have you with us today, ma'am. Ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be an extremely captivating evening with this power-packed panel here. I now hand over the session to the moderator, Mr. P. Thiruvengadam, for further discussions. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Manasi. When I heard the names and I saw the CVs of the panelists, I was in two minds. I was in Mumbai actually this morning, whether I should take the afternoon flight or send an apology to a little nervous with this kind of panel. But then got to know them just before the event and felt a little more reassured after interacting with them. I hope to manage this in about 60 minutes, and that's about the time that the organizers have given us. And we do it in 3 broad stages. I probably manage my nervousness a little bit in allowing them to speak for a few minutes first without asking any questions. After that, I'd be ready with a couple of questions that I'd like to ask them and get specific responses from the panelists. And third, I'd like to have some time where the audience can probe different areas connected with the topic of the evening, which is talent acquisition and access. So we would do that at the end, but in all of that, we'll ensure that we sort of maintain time and we have some. And I'd also like to pull age, not pull rank here, pull age, and I'd address them all by their first names. I hope the panelists won't mind that. It would be a pleasure to listen to them. So I'd like to maximize a time that we listen to them rather than spending time in interruptions and sort of explaining what they've said and so on and so forth. So I'll truly be a moderator and just moderate myself also in the process. First, just a couple of quick words about what we mean by this is that the word talent acquisition and access talks about a little wider, in a wider sense of the availability, the kind of talent, what's available, what kinds of methods by which the talent is available, freelancing, part-time, people who are referred, people who are managed as consultants, outsiders, a whole range of third-party sources and so on. So the way we'd like to indicate to the panel, not that that's restrictive in any way, they're welcome to add to the flavor of what we're talking about. So let's listen to the panel members, the eminent members who are here, in terms of their views first on the broad topic itself. So I'd like to start from that end. Sudeep will just go through it, that's an easier part. So maybe Sudeep, if you could, in about 3 to 4 minutes, you could just tell us some dimensions of what you understand by the topic that we talked about.
So, thank you. You know, the entire focus of this discussion perhaps has really got to be about the globalization of talent. As has happened with businesses, the same thing has happened with talent. So businesses have moved from being local to global, and much before that happened, employees have moved from being local to global. So if you look at your colleagues from your work life, you will find that the ones who've really done well, the people whom you have a lot of regard for, people whom you consider high achievers, are no longer restricted to working in your city and your country. They're the first ones who moved. And by the same token, the smarter companies, the smarter organizations have done exactly the same. They've got people from all over the world to fill in positions which they have. So the first point I want to make is that talent is not local, it has become global. Whether it is schools to company boards. I live in Bangalore, and there are a whole lot of schools in Bangalore where the school principals and teachers are actually foreigners, educators who have come in from overseas and are now teaching here. And if you look at companies, organizations, and you look at not just their boards or their management team, you'll find across at different levels, they have a number of professionals who don't belong to this city, who don't belong to this country. So that's something to remember when you think about talent acquisition and talent access. The next thing that I wanted to talk about was, if you look at the senior level, that's where the biggest problem is. And over the course of the last 20 years, we've grown a lot of managers. But unfortunately, there's not been a commensurate growth in the number of leaders. So you have managers, but not enough leaders. And that is why even that survey that you just talked about talks about the gap in leadership. Now, how do you develop leadership? The growth from being a manager to being a leader requires continuous interventions. That's my third point. In the past, what used to happen was typically training when you entered a job and training when your job changed. Those days are gone. You now have to have training as a part of regular curriculum. The best organizations are those who mandate, particularly from the top, 7 or 10 days of training interventions, which makes their own managers grow up to become leaders. My fourth point is regarding context. All contexts in the past were seen to be in that industry, in that city, in that country. That paradigm has changed. All contexts are now global. The industry itself is global. Your competitors are global. Your markets are global. And your talent is global. So when you think about leadership, when you think about talent, when you think about access, please remember that the context has changed significantly in the last 20 years.
Thank you. Suraj, your points, views.
Thank you, Sudeep. I think I'll just piggyback on what he talked about and then take you further. Before I start, I wanted to just tell you that I somehow very strongly feel that the future has a very strange way of becoming the present all of a sudden. And that's what we see in this global war for talent. The normal would be constant disruption. And if you're thinking you've done a couple of years and you've got people in place and now I can sit back and the train's gonna roll on, you're in for a rude shock, because the new norm for talent will be constant disruption. What do I mean? I mean basically you will need people with, like Sudeep said, with a global mindset, and that takes a completely different way of working. And there's a lot of shortage in that area. When we work in global teams, it could be modular works, it could be handoff points between different countries, it could be project work based, it could be continuous service, it could be in a global company or an Indian company which has regional R&D centers in one country, manufacturing in another, your supply base in a third country, and you have to be someone that is a 168 person. Sorry, 168 is 24 bar 7, 24 into 7. So you have to be a 168 person. Today I will just talk about two things that I think is going to be important, is the HR ecosystem, and the second thing is what I call the HR bounty hunters. Now what is this ecosystem that I want to talk about? If you look at the future, the trends in global